Rita, welcome to the Soul Collective. It's such an honor to connect with you today.
Thank you. I love being here.
You know, you are somebody who I think of to be so eclectic in your wisdom and open-minded. And, I love the conversations that we have together. So I'm so excited just to see what wants to come through today.
Well, the pleasure is on my side. I'm really honored to be here. You're one of my favorite people. I just love you. You like your beauty just shines out from the inside out.
Oh, well, thank you so much for that compliment. And I feel equally as blessed to be in your presence. I know that you have been traveling and adventuring, so I'm excited to catch up on that. And, one of the things that came through was just a reflection around, gosh, it was about 9 months ago. Um, I turned 40 years old and had the opportunity or the download to travel to Mount Shasta. And I know I've told you a little bit about this journey, but what I was so grateful about that experience was really a multitude of things. But one of the things was that my partner Alex was really open-minded to me going alone. And I feel like, sometimes you could be like, oh, 40th birthday, that's such a epic celebration, and maybe be offended or want to go. But he really honored the fact that I was being called to go by myself. And, it was there that really I had such a download around entering this new realm and chapter of motherhood. And so I feel there's probably a few different reasons why that experience came through prior to us connecting. But you're somebody that I think of as extremely well traveled and adventurous and independent and just so many different things. So I'd love to just start by asking you about, any recent travel adventures that have been lighting you up and nourishing you.
Well, I think my most exciting and definitely most nourishing adventure was going to Morea last year to swim with whales. Yeah, there's nothing that I can compare that with, really. That was just incredible. It's sort of life transforming.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I can imagine. What was it that inspired you to go on that journey, and what did you learn about yourself through that experience?
Well, I have always had a connection with whales, even when I didn't know I had it. But I had it from being, a child. I come from the Norwegian fjords with family and ancestors of fishermen and whalers. So I grew up with a consciousness around whales, and I used to draw them all the time, and I used to draw the sea all the time. And my favorite pastime, or my favorite part of my childhood was spent at sea with my father and my uncle and my grandfather and fishing. And we actually had even a encounter with a whale, a small, I think it's called porpoise or harbor porpoise or something in English, Nisa in Norwegian. And at first I was really scared because, it just popped up outside. We were in a little rowing boat and it was quite big. They're quite small, but it was big for maybe a 6-year-old. And so it sort of popped up on the side and on the other side and sort of like playfully. But then they told me that, it's not dangerous. It's just, just here to play. And then I was just all excited. So then I got even more interested in whales. And they're really easy to draw anyway. So so yeah. And then a couple of years ago, I went to Croatia with Jan Lemuri to swim with dolphins because I love the dolphins as well. And that really connected me with my family, or like they're all gone now, they're all dead. But it really connected with me with my grandfather and my father and my uncle, and also my ancestors in some weird way. And also definitely the ocean consciousness, because I grew up by the ocean. But until I was about 19, 18, I had always lived by the sea, although I moved around. And but lately, the last decade or so, I've lived inland in Norway when I've been in Norway, and by Norway's largest lake. But still, that's not saltwater. It's not the same as the sea. And when I came to Croatia, and I just spent so much time in the sea and connecting with water consciousness, and yeah, it was just incredible. And that again, it's sort of like catapulted. When I came back, I started healing, I started guided meditations, I started automatic writing, and it just sort of like built on one another without me having planned anything. It just sort of came my way. Like with the automatic writing, it was Kayla Casey. She asked me, she reached out, she had started a new course on automatic writing, and she wondered if I would be interested in taking it and writing an honest review. And I said, yeah, sure. And then the first thing that came through were the whales and the dolphins. And it was just so easy and it was so natural. And I realized that actually I've been doing automatic writing without really knowing about it, that that's what I was doing because, I'm just a normal person. And these kind of things, they are for the really special people, that have the special gifts or something. But it's not really true. Like we can all do these kind of things. And I knew that as well. I just didn't think that they applied to me.
Mm.
But anyway, so off I went. And again, then the next year I went to Morea with Jan Lemuri again. And that was another like a quantum leap. And it was meeting the whales and it was meeting Morea, the island as well. It's just incredible.
Mm. It's so beautiful how you describe those adventures and sort of the through line of an acceleration of consciousness. I mean, I feel like these beings, I was just watching, in preparation of birth, there's this incredible documentary about birthing in the sea around dolphins. And
Yes.
they're so in tune to women's contractions and the energy and frequency. And they're just such profound beings here on the planet that I feel are really here to assist in the acceleration of consciousness.
Yeah, that must be incredible. That must be amazing. And also when you're swimming, when you are sort of like eye to eye with a whale mama and her baby, that love between them is just so pure, so palpable. It's just so serene and very peaceful, and you sort of drawn into their energy field. In the beginning, I thought it was the current in the ocean, but then no matter from which end you came, and we went out several days, you just drawn in, and then you understand it's their energy field. And you know that they now have discovered that they are sentient beings. And when you meet them like that in their element, there is no doubt. You don't need any research to tell you that they are sentient beings. They sort of open you up. They crack you open in a sense.
Mm.
Um, and you can just feel when looking into their eye, which on the pictures look very small, but it's actually quite big. It's just that the whale is so big that in comparison, then it's small, but not in reality. You just see that you see the intelligence, you see the love, you see the wisdom, and it's almost like they see straight through you. It's just incredible.
Mm.
And it does something. It sort of raises your vibration, and you don't even need to do anything. I think that happens whether you are spiritual or not. It just automatically happens in the meeting. It's like it raises your own vibration. And when you raise your vibration, that's when magic happens.
It really does, yeah. And their frequency that they emit, I feel, is so high vibrational. And of course, we're, attuned to that in so many different ways. And, I want to ask you a little bit about Maria. I would love to come back to that, because I feel like every part of the world, every part of the universe, multiverse has a consciousness to it and a different quality. And, in astrology, there's something that's called astrocartography, which basically
Mhm.
looks at, kind of how your natal placements align with the placements of that part of the world, of how different, perhaps energies in your chart are activated. And so I feel like we're drawn to different places at different times, whether it's to live or whether it's to visit. And it just feels like a very significant place that you've been, called to recently. And, the retreat work that you're experiencing and facilitating there is, feels divinely timed in a way. But I want to go back to something that you said, which was around gifts, and not always recognizing and fully appreciating perhaps the innate gifts that we have. Sometimes we can see them in somebody else, and they can elude us at times. And I know you've lived so many different lives in this lifetime, and I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey of really embracing and having, all of these different gifts begin to come online.
Well, I think there is no plan. And it's sort of, I guess, following your highest excitement of what sort of drifts into your path that you find, oh, that's really interesting. Yeah, let's try that. Or somebody, when it was the healing part, that was somebody, a dear friend who had operated his knees, and I texted him, and he, he said like his knees are burning, and then I just felt my heart activate. So then these images started coming, and I thought, okay, let me try it. I guess I can't do any harm. So I just sort of acted it on that, and then sent him a recorded message afterwards with the images that came up and what had happened. And the next morning he sort of replied with crying or with tears. I could hear, and I've never experienced that with him. He's like a big strong man. And yeah, and also he and his wife, they bought a ticket to go to Tibet shortly, like a few months afterwards. I mean, they bought it then, but to go in a few months so that he would have the time to heal. And one of the messages that had come through was that they were waiting for him there. So I think that sort of inspired him. And then these kind of things just happen. Like I guess my heart sort of, when you feel compassion or you feel something, and it just comes, these images or whatever. So I just did that then. And then when I'd done that, that was so much fun. So then I thought, okay, let me try another friend maybe that I knew needed healing, and then completely different things showed up, other images, and sort of kept going like that. Yeah. And then from there comes I mean, one of the things that have been, I think, groundbreaking is sort of discovering the quantum field and the power of the quantum field. I was doing some meditations with Morgan Lee, where she would just gather people from around the world for an experiment to sort of connect in the quantum field together, consciousness, and see what came up. And when we did that, what did come up was, for example, I saw a whale and somebody else had seen a whale, and they saw a lion and I had seen a lion. And it was just fascinating how when you sort of connect like that, your consciousnesses connect. She calls it soul merging, or hierosgamos. Hierosgamos. I find that difficult to say. Hierosgamos. But also I think you can see it as sort of connecting somewhere in the middle. I don't know, like it's tapping into a common consciousness or something. It's really fascinating. And when you sort of explore that after coming from Croatia, then I realized you can use this also to heal the oceans, and you can use this to heal Mother Earth, and sort of to get together and then guide healing meditations, which I thought was really, beautiful thing to do. So I did that.
I
So
love
it's sort of, it just, it's not really planned. It just, you get these ideas and you try them out.
Yeah, it sounds like, some of the ingredients that you've mentioned are around curiosity, around following your joy and your highest excitement, opening up your heart, having the courage to explore. I feel like these are just some of the key ingredients that lead to such magical, mystical experiences.
Yeah, there's something about that because I remember when I was a child, I just knew I wanted to travel, and I had this idea that when I'm old and I'm in the old people's home in a rocking chair, I'm going to be sitting there and remembering everything I did, like all my experiences. That's when I'm going to like relive my experiences so that I won't be so bored.
Well, I want to ask you about that growing up, because I know you and I have chatted about this before, but one of the things that I find interesting about your journey and path is coming from, perhaps a very focused upbringing, in the sense of religion and perhaps maybe having like one path or one ideology. And yet you are one of the most open-minded, non-judgmental people that I know. And I'd love to hear your experience of perhaps unwinding from a singular belief or perspective and opening up to the vastness that is, this existence.
Yeah, so yes, I did grow up in a very strict religion, um, and with for me a lot of fear based, fear of the devil and fear of doing anything wrong, fear of lying, fear of this, fear of that, fear of judgment day, fear of persecution, fear of all these kind of fears and anxieties. um, at the same time, I was a latchkey kid from age 6, so I spent a lot of time on my own. And I grew up in the Arctic North. We moved from the Norwegian fjords to the very north, to the northernmost town in the world, actually. So we were living in nature, so sort of close to rivers and lakes and the mountains, and I would sort of roam about in the mountains. And I was also an avid reader. I taught myself to read when I was 5 years old, and from the get-go, I just was reading, reading, reading. And my mother was a reader as well, so we would go to the public library and get like a stack of books and go home and read them and then go back. It was like a favorite thing to do. And some of my favorite books were boys' literature from the written in the late 1800s that I think was translated in Norway in 1940s or 50s or so. So my uncles probably grew up with it, or I guess the 30s. My uncles grew up with that. So that at my grandparents' farm, and they had these books, and my father also. But it was about what we called Red Indians back in the days, Native Americans. And so they were my heroes. I wanted to be a Native American. And and part of that um, was the Great Spirit, their worldview that was sort of transmitted in that literature. That I felt it because I felt the stones were alive. I felt everything was alive. I would go to school in the morning and in the evening, and there would be northern lights because it was, above the Arctic Circle, so you would have 23 hours of darkness, part of the like 2 months out of the year, and no sun. So that it was quite dark most of the time. And not to be afraid, I would just, look at the stars and the northern lights, and I felt that they were alive and that they were like my friends and protecting me, and I was just like focusing on them. So I was sort of a nature child, as were the Red Indians that I was reading about. So I think that was a very healthy balance, and also created a split in a sense, because you have that one, the one that you're supposed to be and that you also are, but then you have that one which is sort of like free floating, a bit of a Pippi Longstocking, because there was no grown-up to tell me what to do. And as long as I sort of covered my tracks, because I wasn't allowed to be in the lake alone, so I just had to make sure that when I got wet, that my clothes were sort of dry before my mother came home and these kind of things. But as long, I had that great freedom to explore. At the same time, I had this very, very narrow um, expectations at home. And of course, with that, as I grew older, that got stronger. And I think I shut down more of that nature child, and the religious indoctrination took over. And Yeah, that was rough. I had like I started questioning the religion when I was about 10 years old. I remember my mother told me, and I remember that clearly. I didn't, there were things that I found difficult, like the way they were treating, or the perception of Black people, and also the perception of the roles of women and men. And I thought, men had it so much better. I'd rather be a man if that's the case. And I just thought it was all unfair. And unfairness, I couldn't deal with unfairness. That was, children don't like unfairness, And by the time I was 17, I had a big rebellion, and I left the church. But it was difficult because in this particular religion, the way I was raised, the only ones that would actually go to the devil or the outer darkness were the ones who had known the truth and disregarded it. So that meant me if I left the church. Not Hitler, but me. So it was a very big decision. But in the end, my way out was through atheism, and it was such a relief. It was such a relief to believe that you die and that's the end of it. There's nothing to worry about. Um, but I was pretty much a lousy atheist, because I think within 6 months I came across a book on astrology in the library that they were going to sell off. So I got it, and suddenly I was doing charts, and I was all fascinated with that. And then I came across a book on reflexology, and then that was, so. And of course, astrology was the work of the devil from where I came from. But so I sort of got back on that track. But and I read the Jonathan Livingston Seagull, which is about a seagull who sort of branches out from the flock because he has his curiosity. He wants to know what's out there. So I could definitely relate to him. And then I read Carlos Castaneda, which this anthropologist who was the teachings of Don Juan, who was an apprentice of a shaman in Mexico, and that blew my mind. So I think through reading, and also I guess my experiences, although I didn't quite understand it then. And then I held my grandmother's hand when she died, and she was in just to cut to the long story short. She was then in coma, and it was like she was sleeping. And when she passed away, now when she was sleeping, she wasn't there. But then when she had died, I could feel her presence so clearly, and she was so euphoric, so happy to get rid of this old, useless body because she was quite weak. That I had to be happy for her. I was sad for me, but I was happy for her. And that completely changed the whole ball game for me, because then I knew that there is something after death, and it's definitely nothing to be worried about. And that sort of opened up, my spiritual path.
Wow.
Mm.
Yeah, what a palpable and profound experience to have that inner knowing and sense of you connecting with her spirit, her soul, something bigger than, her physical body in that lifetime.
Yeah, and that is nothing to be worried about.
Mm.
Like when in religion, or then you're always worried that you're not good enough. What's going to happen? Are you going to get punished? Are you going to what's going to happen on the other side? Like if you're not living the best life to your ability within the religion. And now there was like nothing to worry about, and that was so lovely.
What do you feel now constitutes an expansive life from your perspective?
Well, that's a big question. That's really interesting. Um, I think the best life is really to be at peace with yourself and to love yourself, which is ever so hard. I mean, I still have ways to go. And then follow your highest excitement. And that may be just whatever you're going to cook for dinner, or going for a walk in the park or in the forest, or it can be, crossing the world. It
Yeah.
it doesn't really need to be anything big, but and it can be.
I love that you started with inner peace and self-love. And, as long as I've been, exploring interviews and also my own personal journey of self-love, it's like I know how big it is, how, it's so simple, and yet it can be such a journey for each of us, and something that always, tends to come up in conversations I'm exploring. Why do you feel it's so challenging at times to truly love ourselves?
I think for many of us, it's how we were raised, because it's sort of like conditioned throughout the generations. So our parents didn't love themselves either. So how can they sort of love us and help us love ourselves? They're doing it to the best of their ability, but but yeah, it's not easy, and especially if you have these kind of cultures that don't support you loving yourself,
Mm,
that are more control based maybe, or I think the focus often has been also about survival, right? If you think deep down ancestral, it's about survival, how to get food on the table, how to survive a war, how to this. And then, of course, it's loving yourself doesn't is less important if you're thinking about whether you're going to live tomorrow or dead. You don't sit there thinking, "Wow, kumbaya, let me love myself a little today." It's not the priority throughout the generations, I think. And and parents, as parents, we repeat the patterns that we were given, a
mm.
condition as small children, unless we sort of break them. And the more we sort of understand ourselves, the easier it is to sort of choose differently. I think most of us choose differently when it comes to how we raise our children, but there is that subconscious or unconscious that we are not aware of, that we carry with us, that we sort of pass on for free.
Yeah, that's right. I definitely resonate with what you're sharing. And I feel there's, so much programming to focus externally on what we're maybe doing or accomplishing. I know that that was a big part of my journey for many decades of like, doing the education, doing the work, the career, kind of building this external perception of success while perhaps neglecting more of that internal landscape. And I feel education is such a huge piece of that, is like how are we even um, how are we focused? What is the focus? What are we teaching? What are we learning? Like, is there a balance, or is there an emphasis on the internal world, internal landscape of, nurturing and tending to the self? And I feel like this is a area that you're really passionate about, that I've learned a lot from you, is kind of like deconditioning or deconstructing education and really looking at it from a new lens and paradigm.
Yeah, I would say for me personally, education was a lifesaver. I loved going to school, and I did well in school. I excelled. The downside of that is once you start introducing grades, it's about being the best student in the class, or getting the best grades at least. It's not about the learning, so it's about, what do you call it when you're sort of memorizing? It's about memorizing, passing a test, and then checking it out. So basically, you're learning for an external value, which is almost the opposite of really learning something, because the real learning you do when you're passionate about something, and you learn it because you want to know it, or because you have a motivation that you need. Like now with my retreat from Morea, when I sort of felt that inspiration to do that, I needed to get out, and I didn't know how, and I was like, oh, I need a website now. And all of a sudden, I found myself learning how to make a website, because I wanted to do it myself. I didn't know how to communicate my vision. And then I came across this beautiful American, oh God, what's his name? McNeil. Oh, yeah, whatever. Who sort of in 4 sessions, I was up and going with the website, and I could just keep going with it. So I had that, as like when the student is ready, the teacher comes along, Blake and McNeil. So, so then all of a sudden, now I know how to make a website. And I had that internal motivation to do that. While, and I think that's how it should be. That's how children in school ideally should be learning. It's driven by their passions and their needs, or their wants, their desire to learn something. Because when you have a desire to learn something, you learn it so much quicker than if somebody thinks that you do need to learn web design, Frida, because it's really very good for you to know. I probably use 3 years and never learn it because I'm not very tech wizard, or I would have been like mediocre, right? And so it doesn't really change whether you're grown up or adult in my world. It's the same thing, but it's especially important when you are a child, because if you get that from the child, if you don't have to spend decades deprogramming yourself, um, you can accelerate so much quicker, and you can sort of get on the path that what you were meant to be on quicker, in terms of the using your abilities, and yeah, even contributing to society, but definitely to your own inner happiness, I believe. So you see that in a lot of in unschooling families or in homeschooling families, even if they have like a homeschooling base where they follow the more traditional with the curriculum and all that. When you have a small group of children, it's so much quicker to learn what you need to learn than if you are 30 kids in the classroom,
Mm.
because some learn quickly, some learn yeah. So we think that it takes a lot of time to learn something, but it really often doesn't, and especially if you have the motivation. So if you sort of let a child dictate their own learning and follow their own passions, they will gradually expand, and they will sort of often navigate through different naturally topics. So maybe they want to, like one girl I was hearing about, that she had no interest in learning to read. And I think maybe she was even 11, because until she learned how to read, and that's because she wanted to sell her Barbie dolls online or something. So then to be able to do that, to make that on Etsy or so, that she had to learn to do, she had to learn to read and write, and also the calculus and all that. So then in no time she learned how to read, because she had the motivation to do it, a reason to do it.
I love that so much. And it's one of the things that I often kind of think about and am puzzled by about education is just, if you take 30 kids, for example, and you put them in a classroom, there's such unique, vastly different styles of learning, absorbing information, interests, passions, and the standardization I feel like can be such a challenge. So I love what you're sharing about really encouraging self-discovery and a unique sort of path that's not cookie cutter in any way. And I feel like this applies to people really at any age, because we can sort of, deconstruct. One of the, I think the biggest blessings is our ability to continue to grow and expand and evolve. And it's through that inner quest for learning and development. And I feel like if we've perhaps lost that, we're able to maybe reconnect or regain that through our unique style and modality of exploration and following our highest excitement, right?
Yeah. And for me, it's been a process throughout my life, really, because especially because I did love education, and I did excel, and then I ended up going to higher education. I've had over a decade of higher education, including 2 master degrees from top universities in the world. But when I when I was at those universities, Columbia and Cambridge, what I also discovered that the I got a word for something that I had discovered. I mean, that I had felt that very strongly. It was imposter syndrome, and I wasn't aware that there was an imposter syndrome, but I definitely lived with it. So when I heard about it, I was like, yeah, that's me. And what I discovered at Cambridge was that majority of the students, they had imposter syndrome too. It was then the #1 university in the world, and like most of the students around me that I was in contact with, we were all struggling with imposter syndrome. And this is madness, and because now all of a sudden you're surrounded by all these smart people and everything you have to, and it was for me detrimental to learning, because I spent so much energy on trying to sort of keep my head over water, um, that it sort of, I wouldn't say it ruined, but it did ruin. I could have had a much better experience at Cambridge if I wasn't so concerned and so worried and all that, over of making it.
Yeah. Well, I feel like Cambridge or an institution like that is such a powerful microcosm of the macro. It's such a powerful example of a program that's so interwoven into the fabric of our society at this moment, which is comparison. The program
Yes.
of comparison, like looking out and how do we begin to remove those threads of comparison or those perceptions or that belief system of maybe a hierarchy or looking at someone as better than or less than, and really recognize that we all are such individual sparks of the divine, and we all have such unique gifts to share. I feel like we're really in the process of that during this, moving into the Aquarian age.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're right. At the same time, Cambridge was great in the sense that there was a great freedom and a lot of, it's a very independent, you have a great freedom in the thesis you focus on, and great lectures, a lot of things you had to read and all that on your own. And you could also focus what you wanted to read to a certain extent. So it was brilliant. And I went there for a master of education because I thought my country needed to reform their educational system. So very, so I sort of went there all like juiced up to make a difference. But by the time because I was studying alternative education, by the time I was done with where I was finished at Cambridge, I was ready to throw the whole the educational system, like out the window. I said, no, it's like we got to revolutionize this. We got to start all over again, which is kind of which was kind of funny. But yeah.
Yeah, but I think, at least what I'm taking from what you're sharing, and I don't know if this is exactly the essence, so correct me if you're expressing something different, but it feels like there were like powerful nuggets and, value in that experience. And I know for myself personally, I have a master's in business, and there's a lot of, learnings that are helpful,
Yes,
for me on this
exactly.
path. So it's not about,
Yeah,
throwing it all out the window per se, but it's, this integration perhaps between the head and the heart and, these different styles of learning and being.
yeah, yeah. And also we should recognize or acknowledge, I mean, when it comes to children and adults, that we have different learning styles. Like some people are very visual, so they learn by reading and writing. Others are very auditory, so they learn by lectures or discussing and talking. And others are very kinesthetic, so they need to do things. They need to like do it themselves to learn. And then what's the last one? Visual. Oh, it's like, oh, I mixed two. So like the visual, which is like graphic and visual in that sense, and then it's the writing, reading, which is a fourth one. So anyway, and when they've done research, they found out that majority of the teachers, they excelled in reading and writing, while
Mm,
majority of the students or the population at large, they excel by doing. And that makes sense if you think about how we have survived as a species, is children copying adults by doing.
putting them in their mouth, like
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
yeah.
that often if we're not aware of that, we think that, as teachers, we think that, reading and writing, that's the way to learn and, like just get your grip together. But it's not that easy. Like kids and grown-ups, they learn differently.
Mhm.
And some actually, you can be a combination of two or three or all four of them, like I am. So I need to read and write and listen and talk and do and to get anything down, ideally.
Yeah. What would you say to somebody that's maybe looking for that um, spark of reconnecting with perhaps their highest excitement?
It's that, well, when the highest excitement, that is really just here and now. I mean, you can start as easy as here and now. Like when we get off the camera, okay, now do I feel like doing? Because those little small decisions are easier to make than the big decisions, right? And so it's sort of to nourish that little highest excitement muscle. And
Mm,
then when you feel like really doing something, just go for it when you can. Or try to make it happen. This is what I feel in my life when it's really I get these inspirations. Um, I just it's something like I know I need to do this or something, and then it's just you have to trust the universe to put it together.
mm,
Sometimes you hand it over to the universe. Sometimes you do it yourself, but you sort of like collaborating with the universe. I think others, who are very religious, they will pray to God, and I think that can help as well, because it's about getting aligned with your desire, right? So you can pray to God, and if that makes you believe that you can actually do it, then you can do it. So it's almost like the more we believe something, the easier it is to manifest, or easier it is to do it.
mm. Yes, I love that reminder that what we focus on expands. And I love how you phrase it as a muscle, like following your highest excitement muscle, because that can be something that maybe takes practice if you're not accustomed to really giving yourself permission to explore
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are some simple ways? Like I love how you said like when I get off this call, or this connection, it's like, yeah, I'm gonna follow my highest excitement. Like what would that look like on a day to day?
Well, I don't know. Well, I remember I was telling somebody else the other day that when my son was little, he would sometimes he'd come over and say, "Oh, mom, I'm so bored." If I was in the kitchen cooking, for example, right? So I would just say, "Well, go and sit in the stairs and wait until it goes over, like it passes." And then he would go and sit in the stairs, and it would never take more than maximum 5 minutes because that was really boring. So he was just sitting there. And then, of course, when you do nothing, then he would comes up with something that he wanted to do, and off he went. And another friend of mine, this was in my 20s. I said to him like, "Oh, I'm so tired. I don't feel like doing anything. Like if it was up to me, I will never get out of bed." He says, "No, that's not true." I said, "No, seriously." He said, "No, no, that's not possible. If you just lie in bed, just lie there without having to get up, just lie there. Suddenly you'll find yourself in the living room or in the kitchen. At one point, you will get up." And so I did that, and he was right, but then it comes to a point when you don't know what to do, or you don't feel like doing anything, so don't do anything. And then it comes to a point when you actually want to do something, and then you just do it, and you're not even aware that you had that thought. You find yourself doing it, or you just feel like doing it, and then you do that
Hmm.
on a day-to-day basis when you can.
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
Because so much we are forcing ourselves to do things that we think we have to do this or we have to do that and this and that. We have like an agenda, everything we have to do. And in the end, we stop feeling into what do we really want to do because we're so used to chasing what we have to do. So I have been brilliant at that myself. As much as I've done many things that I enjoy doing, I still ended up with 3 major burnouts in my life. So I'm like a master burnouter. And that, of course, part of that comes from not listening to your inner voice, and you keep doing, like, having too many things you have to do, you think you have to do, and doing that without really feeling into if that's right for me or not, or what do I really want to do.
Hmm. What were those phases particularly centered around in your life around, the burnout?
Working
Hmm.
and doing too many things in one time,
That was
actually.
during your filmmaking.
Yeah, well, the first time I was teaching film, and so it was like 100% job. But when I have a 100% job, I generally it was like a 120% job because I get so engaged. And, it's like being a teacher, there's nothing, I mean, there's no end to, if you care about students, and, there's no end to the work really, right? And so many jobs, when you have these kind of jobs where you are dealing with people, and if you're people, if you love people, and if you love kids, and if you love, yeah, then I was teaching film to teenagers, high school at the time. And at the same time, I had also bought a big log building from 1923, which I had restored, not physically, but administered the restoring to make a bed and breakfast. So we lived at half of the house, and then the other half had 8 bedrooms for 12 people altogether. So I planned to run my production company there while I did that, because I had gotten some funding to start my production company when I came back from Colombia, where I did a master in film directing. And then one day I was in a local shop and somebody came over. They seen an article about me in the newspaper and said, well, we need somebody to teach film making at this high school. We have a concentration for media communication. Would you be interested? And I had just never thought about that in my life. What? That's not what I was going to do. But he said, well, why don't you come over? And it was a 5 minute, literally 5 minutes walk. So I went over, I came there and I said, oh yeah, this is what I want to do. This feels good. Yeah, this is the right thing. So then, it's like, my life is a bit John Lennon quote, life is what happens while we're making other plans. So all of a sudden I found myself on a different trajectory in life, which was really good for me. And I got into teaching instead. But then there was the bed and breakfast, and it was the teaching, and then I still had to accomplish my thesis film from Colombia, and I also had to do like a teaching certificate part-time for this school, because I lacked that over 2 years, and I had a teenager at home. So I was just like juggling so many balls. And then I hit the wall very profoundly. I got a flu, and now everybody knows about COVID. So you can call it like a long COVID. Like I got a flu, and then I didn't get well, and I just collapsed basically. And the great thing about that time was that game, first I was just like, I just wanted to get back to work. I thought like the job can survive without me. I learned a very valuable lesson that you're not that important. Like life will always go on without you. That's like an illusion you have, that you think you are, yeah, that everything stops if you're not around. So eventually that gave me time to digest my childhood traumas, basically. Like I think at one point we always have to face our childhood traumas, and that was my time. So sort of dealing with all the traumas from the religion and all these like abandonment issues and blah blah blah. We all have our share. So that was my yeah. And the second time was a similar situation, doing too much. Then I was teaching film at a university or university college, and again doing too much, and hit the wall. And that time gave me that was then I had time to go into my own spirituality, like really deep dive. So that was great, and I sort of healed myself that way as well.
Wow.
And then the third time was a similar thing. Now again, I was working and and uh, and I just too many things at one time, and I got a virus infection, and then hit the wall, and again, exploring. So that's where I'm still at. Like, but now I could take it to the next level of the spiritual
Yeah.
explorations.
So fascinating. As you're sharing, I'm just kind of having a download around how the higher self orchestrates these moments for us to
Yes,
really enter
yes,
healing, whether it's like a physical manifestation or mental, emotional, like, the feeling of burnout or overwhelm, or maybe it's something like, your back is having problems, whatever. It could be so many, a multitude of things, but I feel like it's really like the higher self saying like, okay, I'm ready. It's time to do
time.
this deeper inner alchemy work,
Absolutely.
and there's always a blessing in that, in the midst of even just the, really mundane, hard, challenging contraction. And I'm so grateful that you're bringing this up, because I feel like, on a collective level, that's just it's a time I feel maybe we collectively, our higher selves, have orchestrated whether it's, you know, astrologically or energetically, but that it's just like so much that cannot be ignored at this time, so much that is coming to the surface, to do that deeper alchemy and healing.
Absolutely. And I think it's part of that life journey. I see my life as a journey of several chapters. And because I've done really many different things as well. And my life now is so different than 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30. It's like, is it even the same life? And so I don't, I'm just happy about it all. It's not that it has always been fun, and you have to, we say in Norwegian, you have to meet yourself in the door. I mean, you sort of have to face your shadows, and you have to face your shortcomings, and you're sort of forced to deal with things that you rather not deal with at times as well. But and sometimes I've been very good at beating up on myself for sort of like, oh, again, like I'm not done, again and again and again. But what I've come to learn is that it's like deeper layers.
Mhm.
So it's like for everything we uncover, everything we sort of process, there's like a deeper level of understanding and of wisdom,
Mm.
the silver lining.
Yes.
So it's a great way, I think, to sort of develop your compassion and your I mean, that's how do wise people get wise? They do it through experience, right? If you can study everything and you can become very knowledgeable, but to get wise, you have to experience it,
Mhm. Yeah.
I think.
And I feel, you know, it's the depth that you mentioned, but it also gives us access to a broader range, you know,
Yes.
through that exploration, whether it's, you know, gifts coming back online or just the expansion that we can experience through those deeper layers.
Yeah, yeah. And experiences are just experiences, but it's what you do with the experiences that are important. So you can have small experiences and great wisdoms, and you can have great experiences and absolutely no wisdom. They just become fun stories,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or victim stories as well. It's so easy to get in victim mode. I think we all, me definitely, have been in massive victim mode. And in victim mode, there is no learning. I mean, there's like you need to merge from the victim mode to the sort of empowerment mode, and then you get the essence, the nuggets.
Hmm. Yes. Yeah. Well, I love that you touched on that because I feel like that's one of the most pivotal pieces, ingredients at this time collectively. Like Richard read in the Gene Keys, one of the biggest chapters is the 55 Gene Key, which is about moving from victimization to freedom, you know, and we all have a piece of that to clear.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I want to ask you about soul contracts. I'm so curious to hear your perspective on this, and you know, especially with welcoming, being about to days or minutes or weeks, however long from welcoming a new soul into the world. I'd love to just hear about your journey with perhaps some of the pivotal sort of soul contracts in this incarnation.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a fascinating topic, soul contracts, because you never really know, do you? Like, what do we know? We can hear, we can think, we can believe, and we can feel, but I think if we think about what we feel, I think some soul contracts are not that pleasant, like, right? And others, they're just absolutely beautiful. You meet somebody and you just feel like you have this inner knowing that you've known them much longer. Like one very healing relationship I had when we met for 3 weeks, we were like trying to figure out where did we meet, like where did we know each other from, and we couldn't figure it out. And then I saw this movie after maybe we've been together for half a year or something. I saw this movie, a French movie, Une belle histoire, a beautiful story, which was about a couple in Paris today, and then cross um, cross-cutting with the same people in Israel during the time of Christ or something, and that they knew each other then. So when they met now, they was like, what's this? Like, who are you? And then I was like, oh my God, that's it. Like, we know each other from the past. And that sort of open up, the whole reincarnation realm for me. And I went down that route, and it was very, very fascinating. And our when we parted ways eventually, I mean, the whole relationship was very healing. It was
Mm.
a beautiful relationship, and it was very healing. And I think we got together to work out some issues, or to sort of have that healing. For me anyway, it was a beautiful relationship. And then when it comes to my son, I do believe that we've known each other before. We have always been very attached, or very like close. Um, and probably with most of our family, maybe we have these kind of soul contracts, whether they are nice relationships or not. There's a reason for that, because they are the people that help us grow. They are the ones that sort of install in us the potential of who we can become. In the environment factor, of course, what we carry within being born, that's another factor, the innate.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like contracts has sort of this like third dimensional kind of feeling to it, or energy of like, signing a contract or something like this. But I feel like from the energetic perspective, it's a magnetization of frequencies of the familiar
Mhm.
of, oh, we have, this area or experience that we're meant to explore, deepen into, or learn, grow, evolve.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful. And even if you think it in the larger scale, if you think of source, that we are all fragments from source, then we are all soul contracts knitted together. We are all part of the same whole anyway. We're all connected. And I think that's part of the quantum field, is, the energy between, like, we are all connected. So in that sense, we can say we're just a one major soul contract as
Yes.
well.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that perspective and sharing. And, I want to kind of go back full circle to where we started, which was Morea, which is like this beautiful, from what you've shared with me, um, divine frequency, divine feminine energy that runs through the land there. I'd love to hear more about how you've felt the energy there.
Yeah, nothing prepared me for that. For me, it's 12-hour difference. So it was literally going to the other side of the world. And I thought that was like a one-time deal. And when I landed in Tahiti, I stepped down on the ground. I just wanted, instinctively, I just wanted to get down and kiss the ground. And I started crying. I was like, I can't do that. That's crazy. But I was like tearing up. I felt so at home. It was like the weirdest feeling. It was such a homecoming. And I
Mm.
just immediately felt so at ease and so relieved to have made it as well. And it was, I think, 5:30 in the morning, so it was all dark, and it was just somehow, and it was warm and humid, and I just loved every bit of it. So it was really very special, just touching ground. And then Morea is like a half an hour, 40 minutes ferry ride to the neighboring island. It's a heart-shaped island, so it's called the heart-shaped island as well. And it just has such a beating heart. At one point, I was sitting in a boat and looking at the island and sort of tuning into the island, and I could literally feel the heart of the island beating in synchronicity with my own island, no, with my own heart. And it was just so powerful. Again, tearing up. It's like a lot of tears going on, but it was just that love, and that love that it's like a love island. It's very magic. It's very lush, and it's very, you can almost, it feels like you can see things growing. It's just very, very alive, the whole island.
Mm.
And I was sitting by a waterfall one day and sort of tuning into that, and then I just felt this presence of Mother Earth so strong that I've never felt before in my life, and it was completely healing any mother wound or any, it was like it was just because it was such an overwhelming love. And I love my mother to pieces, really. She's a wonderful woman. But I mean, as parents, including myself, we love our children to pieces, but it's like a conditional love because we have expectations, right? But this love was just, there was no expectations.
Mm.
It was just so pure, this love, and it was from Mother Earth. And I feel that this island has it's like the crossing between the veil between the dimensions is thinner, so
Mm.
it's easier to sort of connect the different dimensions. And that's why, I mean, I've connected with Mother Earth before, including this morning, but it's so powerful there. It's just I have never experienced this so powerfully anyway, and it is the feminine mother love, the way I experienced it.
Mm.
Incredibly beautiful. And there were other participants as well who also had their, felt really healed, their mother wounds, or like they're really healed. A sadness. I had a sadness that I'd carried with me from my early childhood, I think my whole life, a sadness. And and that sort of disappeared. And I have one of the other friends that we became friends. You become a soul family when you're in a place like that, because you experience these massive things and soul contracts. I mean, you meet people there that I'm sure you met before,
Mm.
and and he also had the same. Like he wrote to me afterwards that he had felt this the sadness that he had carried in his heart since childhood that had disappeared.
Mm.
And it's nothing you specially do. It just sort of happens because you are there. Uh,
That's
so
amazing.
it's that conjunction of meeting the whales, which also really transforms you, and the island itself. It's just very magical.
Mm. I'm so excited to share with listeners about the retreat that you are going to be facilitating in October of this year. Just it feels like such a magnificent and expansive experience. I'd love if you could share, just touch on some of, the focus of
Yeah.
that experience.
Well, when I left Moria, I was so sad. I was on the boat ferry, I was crying. When I left Tahiti 2 days after on the airport, I was crying again. It's like I was so not ready to leave. And I was quite not convinced that I was just going to go there for once in a lifetime. And when I left, I thought, well, maybe, maybe I'll come back someday. But I had no plans of sort of, I didn't see that in the near future, so to speak. Um, but but then one night it just came to me. You may call it a download, inspiration, inner knowing, or something, highest excitement. It just came to me that I was going to do a retreat in October, and and I was so ecstatically happy, like goosebumps, chills, crying, like, and I went to bed so like in blissed out, and I couldn't sleep, so I just had to get up and start doing research. And by 5 in the morning, I had the whole outline of the web of the retreat. And there are others also who do whale retreats. Um, and I think what is perhaps special with mine, if it's special, it is what I felt was what I was sort of called to do or inspired to do, is to get together a group of people to sort of pay it forward, like my experience, first of all, of being able to connect with the whales and connect with the island and all that, but also to share among ourselves our gifts
Mm.
if one wants to. It's not like a prerequisite, but I think it's really beautiful when people share. Like lately this summer, we started, a friend of mine, she had the idea that to meet up every Sunday, we go for a walk in nature somewhere, and then we do like a collective healing. We like these kind of quantum travel, like the healing the sea, for example. So we do that, and it's so powerful when you get together and you do this together. And last Sunday when we did it, just a few days ago, then after when we left, we started walking down from where we were sitting in the mountain. All of a sudden, somebody pointed out there was two eagles, and they were circling where we had been doing the healing meditation. They were just circling there for, I thought it was 10, 15 minutes. Others say it was 5 minutes. I think it was an hour. I'm kidding. But I mean, it was just, it felt like forever, And it was just such a beautiful, it felt like a confirmation from Mother Nature that thank you or something. And I've never seen eagles here. I didn't even know that there were eagles here. And I think they're quite rare. Um, so when we get together like this in a power spot, in an energetically charged place like Morea, and meeting the whales, I mean, there is no end to what can happen in terms of quantum leaps in our own evolution. And this is sort of the guidance that has come through in automatic writing, channeling again as well. It just seems very potent and very it's a great potential, like it's a very special thing. And so it's going to be, say, 13 days, so that we will have ample time, not have to rush everything, just really time to be there and to be in the energies and to integrate the meeting with the whales and the activations or the sharings we have with each other. And also I want to do like these healing meditations for the oceans and Gaia and these, and whatever that comes up. It's still in the making. I mean, it's not, everything is always fluctuating, and now everything is happening so fast as well. So it's good to have that flexibility. It's a co-creation, and I think that's really very exciting.
Mm.
And we're going to be living right by the beach on beach bungalows, beautiful beach bungalows. And I've read somewhere like the kind of reviews, people actually mentioning that there are whales that right outside, because the whales, they come into the lagoon to rest and to sleep sometimes. And this is one of the areas apparently that they come, so people can hear them breathing at night or see them in the morning sometimes. Like, there is no guarantee, but apparently this is a place that happens. So when I saw that, I was very excited about that. It's also going to be a full moon for you, interested in astrology. It's a full moon ceremony, and it's going to be the largest super full moon of the year. So we're going to have a full moon ceremony at the Southern Hemisphere. I think that's so magical by itself.
Wow, that sounds incredible. I mean,
And we're gonna, oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry, I
and
cut you
there's
off. I
more.
bring with other things. No,
Um,
that they're like hiking possibilities, that people can go to the interior of the island and do beautiful hikes with magnificent views and just really feel that lushness. And also there are sacred temple grounds that we'll go to. And one of the participants last year, he was standing there on one of those, and he sort of meditated on it. And he got a download that he had been in the council there in Lemuria
mm,
there. And later on the next day, I was sort of sitting at the island and looking when we were at the boat. The boat is my happy place, so it's so easy for me to connect. So I was sort of tuning into that as well. And then all of a sudden I saw that vision of him there and then speaking, and he had such a profound wisdom with him that I just felt like bowing my head and thanking him, like. And so I turned around and I did that. And like, even now, whenever I told this story, I do like this. It's like, and later on, a friend who's very psychic, she said, well, the reason that you feel it so strongly, it's not because it's a vision, it's a memory. You were there too. And
mm.
then I was like, oh yeah, of course. It's yeah, it made sense. And I think these kind of things are very magical, but they're very typical happening there. Mm.
For anyone who's feeling guided to explore this experience and learn more, where can they go to find out more information?
They can go to my new website, spiritualexplorer.no. And yeah, there's all the information, and they can contact me. And if they would like to have a free like a call, I'd love to talk to people. I think that's so much easier. So any questions they may have, feel free to reach out. And also the way I have budgeted this, because Tahiti and Morea and Bora Bora and French Polynesia are really expensive tourist like luxury resorts and destinations. But I've done it as cheap as possible, in the sense that I'm doing it to cover my own costs and the retreat costs. I have an option that everybody can use, which is the discount option. And if anyone wants to pay more, that's like a suggested regular option or a abundance option. But really, anything above no, I shouldn't say that. Yeah, well, anything above the minimum is wonderful, no matter what. and the minimum is equally wonderful.
I love
And if people choose to pay more, I can also use that to help others if they find that difficult. I just really want this, I want to pay it forward. I want others to have this experience. And for some reason, it just feels really what I do in the future. If I do this again, it will probably be different. But this time, it just feels like it's important. It has to be this way. It's like my offering to the universe as a thank you. Now I'm going to cry for my own amazing experience last year. And I've been sort of told to do this, and I'm really honored and very happy and so excited to be able to offer this.
so beautiful, Frida, and it just feels like such a beautiful experience and rich in so many different ways, from the nature, the energy, the whales, um, the community. And I'm also really excited about the experience because the space that you hold and the
Oh,
unconditional love, and talk about soul family. I and allowing people to really embrace their own gifts. I feel that is such an element of who you are and why you're here. So excited for this experience and all that's going to unfold. And, I feel like just in wrapping up this conversation, I mean, I can talk to you for hours, but I feel like a through line that I'm at least receiving is just about the invitation to follow your highest joy and curiosity, whatever that looks like and feels like for you.
yeah, that is so true. I think. I mean, that is the best we can do. And yeah, I would love that. I would
Mm,
love that for myself, for you, for anyone, to our best of our abilities. Yeah. And thank you so much. And thank you for this opportunity as well to have this platform. I
mm,
really appreciate it.
mm. Yeah. Any final words of wisdom that you'd like to share with listeners?
Well, I have actually thought of, because now it's been so fun to do these meetings, when we meet this summer to do these healing meditations. I'm thinking about picking up the online healing meditations again for the oceans and Mother Earth, and I think it's a nice time to do that. So if anyone would be interested in joining that, that will be free as well. That just to reach out on my email on my website, spiritualexplorer.no, and I will start with that after solstice this year.
What divine timing. Beautiful. We'll link to that as well. Frida, such a pleasure always to connect with you. So much love to
Likewise.
you and to everyone listening.
But thank you.